Okay, so if you want to say hi YouTube, that's the moment. Good. All right, so welcome everyone to the Dutch Clojure Meetup number 136. I actually checked, this is number 136 of consecutive months of Clojure Meetups in the Netherlands and over the internet. Since Corona hit the world, we are hosting all of our meetups online. Tonight we have a fairly diverse crowd. I think we have a few long-time Meetup members as well as newcomers. So with a mix and match of Clojure skills. But let's see if we can make the evening interesting enough for everyone. So before the recording, we did a round to see if anybody had any specific topic that he or she was interested to share, to discuss with us tonight. Because we do not have an agenda. I am usually lazy enough not to put together an agenda for the meetup, and tonight is one of those cases. But I did prepare something for tonight, and let's see if we can have a little bit of Clojure fun with that. So, what's that about? Let me actually go and share my screen. Maybe that's a good idea. Unless everything will explode. Nope. Good. So, can you see my screen now? Good. So, the thing that I wanted to try out tonight with you guys, it's something I never actually explored myself too much, but it's something that was always interesting to me because I do run a few Clojure projects, and I was I'm always not entirely sure how to structure my code, and this is a tool together with some sort of set of guidelines for structuring your projects, especially let's say either mid to large sized projects or microservices like projects. So this is Polylith. It's a fairly, I would say, old stuff, meaning in internet terms at least. So it exists for at least a couple of years, I think. But it's getting a little bit of traction nowadays, as far as I can tell from online communities. So what's in the package? This is again, it starts as a guideline for not only structuring your code, but also how to interconnect let's say different logical pieces together. And it also comes with a tool that helps you navigate this set of structures and the guidelines. And these screenshots that you see here are from the tool that I just mentioned. So let's try to give it a shot. And I think actually maybe this is probably a slightly nicer website to look at. So they do have a very nice documentation website that explains the overall guideline that Polylith suggests for your code, and maybe what we are gonna do is we will try to create a project ourselves using Polylith and try to run things and develop stuff on top of it. There is gonna be Clojure, there is gonna be some glue code here and there, but let's try to see if we can make sense out of it. So I don't want to just read a website for you. That's going to be super boring. So let's try to see from the overall perspective over here what Polylith suggests you to do. So what it is suggesting you is to split your code into different, let's say, layers or abstractions. Probably most of you would be familiar with the concept of a component. Component being some sort of a logical unit of your code, something that implements maybe a specific functionality, for instance, in an independent fashion. In Polylith, the main thing is that every component is not only an independent piece of software, but that can be consumed as a dependency from some other pieces of software, but it also exposes an interface, and any user of this component should only interact with the component using this interface. Now, Clojure does not have the object-oriented concept of an interface. There's not really the strict concept of encapsulation that you find in other languages, but we will see how Polylith suggests you to deal with that. Next to components, you have bases, which is main role of a base in Polylith is to offer an external API to the outside world. Usually what a base does is to, again, once some request is received from such external API, which can be a REST API as well as just a normal Clojure API for that matter. The role of a base is to route such requests to the right component to use to answer such request. And difference from a component is that a base does not have an interface, because it's meant to be an interface in itself, so it only has an implementation for that external interface. Then what happens is these are some sort of logical pieces of software, and projects are in Polylith aggregations of bases and components that are supposed to be somehow deployables, let's say. And we will see how you can define dependencies between bases and components and projects, bases and components. So say you have your fancy microservices architecture. From a deployment perspective, you would have one project per microservice, but then you are free to create your components in an independent fashion, and then every project could consume components as on a need basis, and this way you can achieve supposedly high reuse of code, which is usually the goal of every code architecture, at least. You do have a special project, which is the development project. The idea is that projects, the normal projects, are meant for production use, and they should be targeted towards production use. So a project that describes exactly what's going to run in production. Development project is different in many senses. We all know that during development you have different needs than production, and given specifically what Polylith offers you, development projects are usually used to be able to access everything in your workspace, which I didn't cover yet, but let's say workspace is a collection of everything else. So everything goes into a workspace. So from your development project, you supposedly can access everything, all the components, all the bases, all the projects in your workspace, and for instance be able to run all of your microservices at once, just at your repo. So that's why development project is little bit different. That's Polylith in a nutshell, and I'm not an expert in the subject. I'm just trying the technology out together with you, so I might have said something super stupid. We will only discover while trying out the exercise tonight. So I would like to go to my Emacs and try to see if we can try this project out. So I think let me see if I can actually find yes, the command line I want to run. Yes, so we are gonna create a Polylith project. This is the command line to use. This is something interesting from Polylith. So in Clojure land, you typically have to know what you're doing and go and edit your configuration files yourself. This project comes with a tool, Poly, that you can install in many different ways. There's a... Did I say just a no? Did I hear that? Who was that? Nobody knows. Good. So Poly help, I guess. So this tool for Linux, you just have to download a jar file pretty much, and as you can see, it's a fairly extensive command line interface to do many different things. What we are gonna do is to create a new workspace. This is the command I used before the meetup to just try things out myself to see if I could have something to show interesting for you tonight. And I don't know what kind of an application do we want to create tonight? What do we want to do? Sudoku solver probably too complicated. Anybody has a good idea for a simple project to do? Meetup. Let's say hello world for now. Hello world, and that's fine. And then I'm going to use topns and I'll close this. So we are just gonna call it hello world and then hello world. Okay. So a few things happened over here. Let's see. It did made a log. Oh yeah, interesting. Yes. Okay. Not necessarily your fancy, personal logo, but you have a logo. Let's see. Find dot type file. Yeah, of course. So yeah, there's not too much in here, but there's already something interesting to look into. First of all, this. Is there anyone that never looked into deps.eten in Clojure? What that is? This pretty much. Do I need to spend any word saying what kind of file are we looking at? Would it be useful for anyone? Okay. Was that a yes or a no? Sorry, I couldn't hear that. Okay. All right. So let's just take for granted that most of the people know what this file is. It's actually fairly common in many different languages. It's just a project specification file, deps.eden. This is something that Polylith chooses for you. At the beginning, Polylith was started as a Leningen plugin, so a plugin for the Leningen build system, build tool. But that was abandoned in favor of this Poly command line tool together with deps.eden. Interesting things is that Polylith actually can be configured within the deps.eden file. You can configure a few things. So we will see how Polylith is going to use these things, but pretty much this is going to be used as your base namespace for everything you're going to create through the command line tool. This is the name of the namespace that will contain the interface for each and every component, which is used for Polylith to auto-discover dependencies and usage of components from one another. This is irrelevant for now, and then there's a few things that are used by the Poly tool to show you how, if anything has changed since the latest stable things. And this is just aliases to projects which are used again by the poly tool to show you things such as the one I'm going to show you now, shell. It takes ages to run because this is an actual Java jar starting up every time, but this is the way you start looking into things, into Polylith things. So you do have the concept of interfaces, which are component specific. You have the concept of projects, and you see here a few counts over here. Interesting enough, the poly tool that I used already created a Git repository, committed everything, and so that's already being used by Polylith to say, okay, the project was stable since you commit with SHA this. So there's a few things done for you, and we will see how to do stable things later. Another thing that we can do is the first thing we can do is probably create a component, which is the first piece of Clojure code that we can create. Let's see. Hello. Or let's say the component is called. Yeah, hello. Why not? So, and this is some sort of a scaffolding tool. What's going to happen? You will see. There is a few new files created over here. So before, components was an empty directory with just the .keep file for Git reasons. And now we do have a few more things. We have a test, we have an interface, and we do not have an implementation file for now. Another thing is this. Remember to add source resources and test directories to deps.eden. So what does that mean? That means that the pieces of code that were created are not yet integrated with our tools. So for instance, if I deps.eden, if I open the deps.eden, there's no mention to the folders. Let me just open it here. So this is the folder where the source code is for the interface. This is the folder where the sources for the tests are. They are not referenced into my deps.eden, so they are not gonna be picked up unless I do something like this. Components, actually was correct. Hello source, and then let's just put resources for any good reason, and then this is when I run the tests. I want the test to be run as well. One interesting thing over here is that I'm doing things in the development alias here. So supposedly whatever I put in here is used only at development time. The reason for that is that the main deps.eden file that you have in your workspace is the development project itself. So it's the thing that has access to everything in your workspace. If you want to have an actual project, you need to create it first. And we can see how that works by going here, doing this, and we say hello service. Hello service, why not? So let's wait the usual half a year. Okay. Yeah. So a few things here and there. So we do have the project to alias thing to add. This is going to be used by the poly tool to display things in a nice way. But hello service actually. Hello service is going to be called hello, and this is going to be mentioned by poly info. So here you see that the Hello service that I just created is it's a project actually, and there's some stars over here. The alias is the one that I used over here, and here you see also something that I forgot to mention here and there, but these are marks that are used by Polylith to tell you if the thing itself has a source directory, if the thing has a test directory, and if tests are going to be run. Right now there's no tests to be run, but you can do something like poly test, and it will just say I have no tests, so what do you want? So let's actually, we just created a project, so let me just do the find again, because here we will see that there's a few extra things being created here. Interestingly, the main thing it did when I asked the Poly to create a project was to actually create a folder with another deps.eden file. So deps.eden is some sort of a marker for a full-blown Clojure project. Let's have a look about that project over here. Project hello service deps.eden, fairly like empty one. The way it will work, let's say that we created a component before, it's called the hello component. Let's say we want to use that hello component in my new project. The way it will work is that I need to do things like here, like this, components hello source, and here, well, let's say I don't have anything, but just for complete, being complete, and then here so what's interesting for me to see here is that this is all using relative paths, so makes me feel like I'm doing JavaScript stuff for some reason, but the main idea, I guess, in Polylith is that your workspace has one project descriptor, which is for development, and then each and every sub-project has to have its own development descriptor, but since all of the other things, bits and pieces of your project are spread across your workspace, you need to use relative paths for the, let's say, mono repo to be all working together. All right, so let's try to write our first component to begin with. So let's see, components hello source nl closure base hello core.coj. Let's say I want to say first of all, let's have a look at the interface first. This interface declares nothing. This is the file that so given that the namespace is called interface, there is some convention saying that this is going to be the file that includes the what's the, let's say, public API for your component. So everything consuming your component as a dependency should only use whatever is in this file. So let's say that we do defen, no, actually this is something wrong in here. This is just my Emacs configuration, which is doing something stupid. Let's say that I declare a function called greet name, and this is a hello world, so we say nothing here. This is an interface. So what we're gonna do here is we are gonna require nl closure days core as core, and this interface will just route the request to core/greet name, which we are gonna do here. So this is what I'm writing right now is similar to, let's say, the tutorial that Polylith describes. If I'm, yes, that's correct. So name. This is the implementation. It's gonna be just hello name this. So, no, actually I haven't started my REPL even. But anyway, this is the structure. So you have the interface, which is actually forwarding to your concrete implementation, and concrete implementation is a pure function that does whatever you want it to do. So here we have our first service, component. So let's see if I can write a test for it as well. I don't actually require this at all. So let's say I want to write my first dev test. Greet user hello. Let's say happy path. Testing given user name. I'm Carlo. When I greet the user, let's say I just want to actually also require my ML closure base hello interface as hello. Hello greet name. Then the user is properly greeted. Now, what I would expect if I did something good was that the tests should be run. Will they? Yay! So it actually ran one test. Let's say poly-info. We should have now something more over here. There you go. So now I have two projects because I have. Well, we saw that before. We have the Dello service project and development project. We have one interface and one component. We can even see the dependencies between each and every different things. And this is quite ugly. So it says that what Polylith does when using his tool is to use color coding for things. So this is the color of interfaces, this is the color of components, color of project, color of bases. So you see everything pink over here is project related, and this is yeah, that's how it works. So what I'm seeing over here, I think, let me check, because I think you should be able to say something poly help depth. To also show project dependencies as well, because what I would like to see is that the project that I created depends on one of my yeah, there you go. So poly depth project hello. Yes. Yeah, I don't know if they explain that in any detail anywhere, because I was actually going through all of the documentation that they have, and they say at some point that when they try to explain you this specific text that poly-info gives you, it says, here we are mentioning bricks, so we are going to tell you later what it means, and I never go to that part. Could be me. Let me just see. Yeah, there we go. Components and bases are referred to as bricks. That's pretty much it. So it's just a common name for both. And yeah, so they got their inspiration, so to say, for namings of things from Lego. So that's probably why they call them bricks, because it's the things that you can, from a project perspective, pull in and combine in different ways depending on the project you're creating. That's, I think, the idea. All right. So let's see. Now, what I was doing was to see this. Yeah, that's very not informative, but I guess this means that for the project hello, it depends on the hello brick, and that's pretty much it. Okay, fair enough. So let's see. I have tons of things that I created. Let me just see what we have here. Yes, staged as well. First commit. Now, one thing that Polylith tries to do for you is to keep track of changes between things. So what it says is that right now you will see that there is some stars in things like this, and let me see. Yes, that means that something was changed in this specific project. This is a project, and something was changed in here, and that's I think. So what Poly does is to track changes between the last stable release and the current situation, current state of your Git repository. So if we were to say to tag, for instance, stable baby step, first release, just baby steps. What it should do now is to say we are in a much more stable situation. There we go. So all of the stars went away. Now the stars is not just a way to indicate what projects and bricks have changed between the previous stable point and the current stable point, but it is also used to understand if any test needs to run. So this last thing over here, if you remember, I said that this indicates that this project has a source folder. This component. This component has a test folder, and whether this component is going to be actually tested. And what Poly is able to see is that this component was changed since the previous stable point. That means that the tests have to be run, and this is a way that Poly, the Poly tool can be used in, for instance, continuous integration to optimize the test duration. Usually, tests can take longer, and by using this trick to only test whatever was changed since the previous stable point, you reduce the amount of tests to run at each step. Also, given in projects, it is discouraged to have a source folder. So projects ideally should just be the Lego experience. So you pull in bases and components the way you need, and but you should not introduce any production code into the project. There can be tests though, because of course you can have, for instance, things like little integration tests also at the component level, but in projects you can have things like performance tests or end-to-end tests that are only achievable within the project that has all of the external interfaces available. So what Poly does with this trick is that if I have a project that uses a component that was changed and that project has tests, then it will run the tests of both of the project as well as all the dependent components. And that's kind of a nice way of managing it. What else? So let's say that we want to have what can we do? Well, let's say that we want to have a command line interface to use this this component that I created. So I want to create a way of greeting users from the command line. Let's say that should entail creating a base for my project. That's as usually done with a poly create base name. Let's say create CLI, I guess. Remember to add source, resources, and test directories to test to deps.eden, of course. Let me see. I only have the two deps.eden in my project. This is the usual dance over here. Let's see what actually was created by Polylith. Now I have greet CLI structure within bases, so I need to do something like here. To add here bases is not hello, but it's called greet CLI, and then greet CLI, and then I also want to run the tests if any will be available. So bases greet CLI test. Okay. Let's see, what should the base do? The base should actually use the user, how we call the hello component, and do something with it. So let's see, bases quickly source and create core. Let's say that do this and then do define main username, and then we say print line hello user. Actually, let me just do something else here. String hello. Actually, not here. I want to print line the user. Hello. Read. What's the name of the component? The name of the function. Do you remember? Component. Hello. Source and says hello interface. So I need to do require the interface as hello, and it's gonna be hello greet user name. Okay, that should be pretty much it. So why is this a base and not a component? So as we mentioned, bases are kinda like components with a special purpose. So the purpose of a base is to offer let's say APIs to the external world. What this base is doing is to create executable class. So that's what gen class is doing here, is whenever this code is compiled, a new Java class is created with a main method that receives a variable amount of arguments, and I'm using the structuring here to grab the first thing and I'm invoking the component hello to greet the username, and then I'm printing the result, and that's it. So this is the external interface. It's just a command line interface to say hello. Very sophisticated. Now, what should we do to actually use this base? The way it works, the way it should work, is that in my deps.eden from a project, I actually think that I need to include bases. What's a greeter? Was it greet CLI source resources, and then test over here. So I'm adding these things in the deps eden for the project, because the project is the thing that pulls in all of the Lego bricks that we discussed before. Now, one thing that Polylith does not give you is a build tool. So now what if I wanted to actually build this project? What should I do? What needs to happen is that I need to compile all of the Clojure code that is being used by this project, and I need to package it into a Uber jar. So a Java jar that contains all of the classes needed to run the project, and also assign a main class to the jar, so that whenever you run the jar, it knows what to do. To do that, it's you have nothing straight from Polylith. You need to create your own thing. So the suggested way to go with this example, I'm gonna just pull in from another project that I did before. Projects here. You need to actually do things yourself, and I'm gonna just remove that for now. So let's say here. Okay, so what's actually happening here? This is actually CLI. I need to update a couple of things. Is it Clojure Days Grid Core? Yes. And also here. Okay, so in this deps.eden, I'm defining two aliases. We're gonna see how we're gonna use them. And I think, yes, one alias is to have to AUT compile. What that means, ahead of time compile, it means actually compiling the Clojure code that will generate actually the Java classes we need. And then I have an alias for Uber jarrings, which means by using this extra dependency, this is a tool that knows how to create Uber jars, and I'm saying pretty much invoke this Clojure namespace and set this as the main class for the jar itself. Let's try to see that in action. Shell. So I need to see where am I here? Projects, service. For some reason, you need to create this folder yourself. Then we can do clj -AUT. This should actually do the AUT compilation. It might take some seconds. Also, I'm usually not using Emacs as my shell, but I think it makes it for an easier. Oh, kaboom! I did something stupid. Here. Yes, my bad. Nobody told me I was doing something bad. You should tell me if I'm doing something bad. Okay, so what happens here? Now I have find classes minus type f. This is what happened. So the compiler compiled and did all sorts of ahead of time compilation of closure code into Java classes. Don't ask me why we have this. I have no clue why we see closure core specs alpha into my ahead of time compilation. That's interesting. Anyway, so we had another alias, if you remember, deps coj, there's a uber jar. What this thing is doing is creating a big giant zip file of all of the classes we compiled ahead of time, plus all of the classes from the dependencies of my code, which is pretty much nothing by now apart from the closure itself. And it's creating an executable jar. Jesus, how many? You see, when I said it feels like JavaScript, right? So I didn't explicitly mention any dependency, and here you are. That's how much stuff I already have. Anyways, target. I have hello service, so if I say Java minus jar target hello service dot jar Carlo. That is actually bad. I did something wrong. It says it doesn't know how to find the main class. Y NL close days read. Oh, my bad. He is right. Unfortunately, he is right. And that's the thing. So yeah, this is let's say you can call it an issue if you want. So the relationship between naming between closure names and Java package names is that minuses in closure are translated into underscores in Java land. So we are gonna do, well, actually we probably did not need the AOT because that was actually valid, but I am stupid, so let's just wait now for it to be done. Okay, and uberjar it should take a little bit longer than the AOT, unfortunately, because it has to do more things. Okay. Did it work? Yes, it works. So this is the outcome. So what happened here? Just let's have a look again at my project structure. Now I am in the Hello Service project. In this specific folder, I only have deps.eden pretty much. That's the only thing I have. And this project is still able to produce the executable jar file, including all of the other components and bases. And it actually works. So I'm just setting the main class to be the one from the base. So this class is actually created from the base over here. And I run the main and everything works together. So this is nice. Let's have a look at what we have over here. Oh, of course. You can only execute that command from the root of the Polylith workspace. All right. So here we have one thing that got changed. The clip project was changed. So poly test. There's no new test actually, but hey. Yeah, zero tests for the base because we didn't create any test, but I believe maybe by default a test file is created that just doesn't contain any tests, so fine. So again, if we look at the base here we are just importing an interface names requiring an interface namespace and invoking functions on this interface. One thing that is done in the example project that I'm not gonna do here is that it is possible. We can actually probably at least start with it, but I'm not gonna go the full length of it. Is that you can create multiple components sharing the same interface. What's the name of our component here? Hello. Okay, so it's actually the same name. We can call it hello whatever. So the idea being that you can have multiple components sharing the same interface, and what's happening here is that components hello whatever source NL closure days hello interface. Oh, what? That's actually not what I expected. Hello source NL hello interface. This should actually go kaboom, I think. Let's see, and I'm gonna explain why in a second. Yeah. So okay, component with any missing definitions in a hello whatever interface, greet name. So this is actually what Polylith is doing for you. What given that you have the same namespace for the two for these two component interfaces, Polylith requires you that the same interface is exposed in both not what's well a not implemented exception, what's well exception not implemented, and let's see now what's happening over here. Yeah, and now what's happening, what it is complaining about is that we have components. We have two components, hello and hello whatever. They implemented the same interface, and they should not be part of the development project. So what we did here is that in the development project I'm adding the component hello, but Poly knows, hey, you know what, the interface of this component is reused by another component, and this is fishy. You should be explicitly choosing which implementation of that interface you want to use in any given project. You cannot have multiple components implementing the same interface in a project, apparently, at least not in the development project. So what it is suggesting here to do is to say default paths remove the component from the development project and add those resources, actually even this as well. Here and here, and then create another alias which we will call whatever. Here. Here. So this way you can choose what implementation of the hello interface you want to use in any given moment in time, whatever REPL you're gonna start. Already check. Now we should be in the clear. No, of course. What was again the thingy to select? I think actually should. I thought there should be a default profile that should be picked up, named default, right? Am I misspelling it? No, don't think so. Any stupid thing I'm doing? Let's see. Well, actually, what I see in the project I did before was that it was using these plus things to mark those profiles. I don't know if this is enough for the default to be picked up automatically. Yes, that was it actually. Names. Okay. So yeah, this is the default is going to be picked up. So by default, the development project will have this component, and if you specify the whatever, let's try it out actually. Let's see. This is my command to start the REPL. Let's say minus alias. Let's see if it is actually gonna work. It should actually explode with an exception as soon as I try to execute something. I could have probably done it from the shell in an easy way, but kaboom. Yeah. So by what I did was to start a REPL by specifying a specific profile, and that profile pulled in a specific implementation of that component, which throws instead of just greeting the user. And this is the way that projects. So this is what I did for the development project. You could do the same for a similar thing for the let's say production project as well. I just want to see if we can see Polylith, if there's anything interesting to see over there. Okay, so there is here it is saying that now I have two components and one base, and that this base depends on the hello interface. And if we had more interfaces that maybe our components would depend upon, they will be seen here as well. So now if we see Polyinfo, it should say that a few things have been changed here and there. So it also, one extra thing that it did was to actually expand the overview to list also specific profiles that we set up with that plus thingy, and it will show whatever situation is there, also depending on what profile you choose. It also says active profiles default, but you can also say default, not also whatever. And you can include different profiles to be active at the same time, and what's gonna happen is that it will actually explode indeed for some reason. Yeah, because more than one component, so you cannot actually do this. I was hoping that you, just from a what tests need to be run perspective, it would do both, but that's not what's happening over here. Okay, so that means that you should be able to do like this for the default. But also for the, let's see, test hello, exploding kittens, happy path. I don't know if you know exploding kittens, so you can of course Google for that. You're welcome. And then what should we do? How to actually how do you test in closure test if something explodes with an exception? Somebody must know. Oh, I don't. All right. I think the class maybe, or so if I were to say the whatever profile, it will actually test this one. And these warnings that you see here most likely come from the Java version I'm running over here. It's actually impossible from here to see anything. Let me try to see if actually this test was run by is equals 42 hello read kittens, because I'm seeing here that it is only testing things from a project. This project is only pulling in the other implementation of the components of the interface. So yes, this is actually not testing what I would like it to test. So I don't know how to actually test that specific thing. How would I test that? Probably it is tuned to not test the things that do not need testing because there's no project referencing those components. I don't know. But I'm fairly sure you should be able to specify whatever thing you want to test. There we go. Is it me or is it missing something here? Because it's always focusing. Let me see if I can also, because I think what we need is actually this. Let me try it without the profile first and see if this is what I'm looking for. So now I included the development project, which is normally excluded from everything that you do in Polylith. Nope. So what if I do specify the whatever project? Now this in combination with the dev environment should actually trigger the exploding test, I hope. Yes, there we go. Okay. So apparently components have to be tied to a project for them to be tested, and this implementation of the hello interface is only currently tied to the development project by means of a profile. So I had to specify both the fact that I want the development project to be tested, as well as that I want this profile to be enabled for this thing to go and explode for me. But then if I were to say this, it should actually pass the test. Right. So and that's, I think, pretty much what there is to it. Maybe the only thing is let me just do this. Something about exploding kittens, and then and something I didn't try yet, is to actually what did I do? No. I want to actually version, to create a version tag, because I never saw what Polyinfo gives me with actual versions. So if you stable since here, it doesn't mention pretty much anything. Here in the Polylith configuration over here, you release tag pattern. I don't see the dot over here. So that should be it, right? I do have a release as far as I can tell. Doesn't really mention any release, anything at all. Interesting. I was actually hoping to have something about releases showing up over here as well, but apparently not. No, not really. This is probably gonna be tell me nothing at the moment because nothing was changed. But so there are a couple of extra things that are actually interesting here and there. For instance, this. I did something stupid. This get settings. Prepare for a big amount of text to be thrown at you. So this is a way of Polylith to actually capture all of the single pieces of configuration from the project, so that you can share this project description with anybody else, and you can run poly info commands on top of this to explore whatever can be the structure of projects without sharing the project itself. Other things as well are that we didn't explore are like this, an S2 library, so you can instruct somehow Polylith to look into your code and see which code is using which namespace from a third-party library, so you can check what component is depending on what library, and that will be then used in the polydevs command to give you an overview of components depending on external libraries as well. But in general, I think what we saw so far was 80% of Polylith, and I guess that's good enough for the time being to have a feel for what there is to it and what is there for you to use for your project structure. And I'm actually now more interested into hearing your comments on is this anything useful, not? Would you use it? Would you avoid it like something really bad? Is it completely irrelevant? No? Yeah. You can probably do some magic with Git though. It's Java. I did experience it to be much slower when running it through my Emacs shell than my regular shell for some reason, but I do agree it's slow, so I don't see any reason why they shouldn't try to have a Graal VM version of it, because I do believe what's happening here is that we are paying the price of a Clojure application, Clojure jar being started up every time, which means you are bootstrapping Clojure the language every time you run a command, which is it's not CO2 friendly, so to say. But yeah, it's slow, and I think if they offer a command line tool, it should behave as such. And yeah, for the project structure, I think the only thing that you can do with private components to your workspace is indeed the Git magic of Git submodules. I don't know if that's the proper name for it, but something like that. Another limitation that I saw, because I was thinking, okay, I have my big fat Clojure monolithic application, is it worthwhile to migrate to Polylith? Part of the thing that we do is to actually ship backend and frontend together, and Polylith is not really supporting frontend stuff at all. They explicitly say in the front end, in the web front end world, you have big amount of tools and projects, frameworks, libraries that have different opinions on how to do these sort of things, so they do not want to mess with that at all. That means if you're doing ClojureScript, good luck. Yeah. I did find somebody that did put together a project that does both ClojureScript and the shared code with CLJC between front-end and back-end, but that project didn't have any test in it, and I think that's where things will start to collapse. If you need to actually have some tests that have to run through a ClojureScript runtime, things might go sour, because you cannot have one single process that can test all of your components. If one of your component is ClojureScript and the other components are Clojure JVM, then your runtime will just go kaboom. So yeah, this is another limitation I found, but for my specific use case, it's still debatable whether shipping the compiled ClojureScript within the Clojure web app is a choice or just something that we did because who has the time to manage to separate delivery pipelines for backend and frontend, even though that means my Clojure build takes 15 minutes longer because it has to compile node stuff. But Joost, just since you are discussing it a little bit, it did remind me of a few things we did together in past projects as well. The concept of using some sort of a monorepo for different deployable artifacts. I do find that convenient. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and if you have a bigger project, it probably means you have a bigger team, and that gives you a shared way of doing things, because Clojure can be very much free form, and this gives you some structure to the get-go. It is, yeah. But it is probably fine, because the tool does give you some visibility on everything, and also the project structure is very flat. So you just what's my shopping list of things we have in the project. You just do a listing of a specific folder, and you see the whole shebang. Yeah. In my case, thinking of my project, I do actually have one single code base that produces, I think, 4 or 5 different deployables, and that this way of doing things would have some advantage in structuring code that has big. I work in a startup, so we cut corners as soon as we see the possibility to cut corners, and after 3 years, it shows. So that would at least give a way of structure things in a more sane way. We were trying to think recently of a way of better encapsulating concepts into services or something like that, and this is something that feels cleaner than what we were coming up with ourselves. So that's a plus. But indeed, I'm not sure if for us, the negative side would be we need to rethink our front end completely to begin with. Yeah. Is there anyone here with experience with let's say large scale closure project? I'm not sure if AtGoji can be classified as a big scale project. I actually don't know how big the project is. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, and that's probably, let's say, orthogonal to code structure. So that the problem of the explosion of feature branches and the costs of maintaining and testing environments, it's a problem in itself, regardless of how you structure your code. It's more of a function of how many developers you have, and in the past, the solutions that we have been exploring with different companies were, I think that the most recent ones were to look into, we were using Kubernetes for deploying things anyway, so what you would have is enough capacity on the cluster, which is easy with cloud vendors because you have auto-scaling, and then you have one Kubernetes namespace per feature branch, and some way of resolving IP addresses so that you have like per pull request you have a different environment that you can point to. But indeed it can get expensive. Yeah. Or they open up the pockets and just pay the price for it. Whatever works. Sure. All right. That was actually as much as I had prepared for tonight. So I'm not sure if you want to have anything else to chit chat about, to do our last final thing of closure fun. Anybody has any ideas? Should. Mm-hmm. Instrument all the code that you have, that sounds scary. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. I do see in the OpenTelemetry GitHub organization an OpenTelemetry Java instrumentation, right? You probably already saw that. Hmm. And you are looking more into JVM level statistics. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Coda Hill goes a little bit further than JMX indeed, but yeah. Um, I'm not sure if there's anything. What I'm doing right now, I just cut it short and not monitor anything on the service level, and I'm just using metrics from levels up in the stack. So for HTTP metrics, I'm just using load balancer statistics because that's pretty much equivalent. For let's say health of the JVM process, I'm just looking into, I'm running everything on Kubernetes, so I'm looking at the pod, memory, and CPU usage. So I explicitly didn't want to dive too deep into the application itself, also because we have different technologies that we use. So we do JavaScript, we do Java. So by looking at from the outside as like black boxes, I found a way to make things manageable. Yeah. Yeah. It again we startup here, little team, so it could be too much information that nobody has the time to look into. But indeed, it could be something interesting to look into from a testing perspective, especially. Of course. Yeah, this was one of my main selling points for looking at performance of my software components from a black box perspective, because you do have, like in the Google Cloud Platform, which we are using, there's a way of creating your own dashboards with those metrics, which are already supported by the underlying Prometheus agent, because it's just part of the cloud infrastructure. I didn't have to do anything. So yeah, big plus. Yeah. 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 I think it is actually using Coda-Hail matrix, right? Drop wizard. I actually stopped following, but there used to be something from Netflix as well that was doing something along those ways, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. There used to be, back in the day, Riemann was the application you would look into for these things in Clojure. I'm not sure if it's still hype these days. You know Riemann? Steve Jobs. No. Yeah, what's the name of... Ugh. Yeah, the best technical blogger as far as I'm concerned. That he has a few blogs which are just mind-blowing, like the one in which he's solving the M-Queen's problem, just encoding everything into Haskell types. That's just like... Yeah. Grok in the interview, something like that, yeah. Yeah. But Jepsen is really a very interesting piece of software. I was always following the Jepsen reports on specific distributed tools to see if they were, passing or not the test. Yeah, I don't know if, let's see Riemann on GitHub, if it's actually... Yeah, seems alive. Only 21 issues for a project that exists for at least 6 years, and it's possibly a one-man show. Very little number. So yeah, I don't know if Riemann could be an interesting thing for you, Joost. It is a bit of a self-service thing, so there's no instrumentation, I think, but you can... Yeah. Yeah. It could be interesting to look into writing some sort of how do you say that, statistics gathering layer on top of well used Clojure, at least web libraries, so that you can hook these statistics collectors to Composure or to what's I don't even know the name of the tool we are using for from Metozin for HTTP. Too late in the evening. My brain doesn't work anymore. But yeah, so that you could do that, and that could be actually an interesting thing. But then you still need to have an outlet of this information. So where are you gonna plot and graph this information? Yeah. 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 All right. Yeah. It's like 10 p.m. over here almost, so I guess it's a good moment to wrap it up, I guess. So yeah, thank you all for actually sticking to the meetup so long. That's impressive. So yeah, I think we never arrived this late with this many people, so yay. Yeah. Okay. Let me just stop the recording now.